I'm about to show you the biggest lie you've been told about studying. You think top students work harder than everyone else, right? Wrong. They actually work less, way less. What if I told you that the valedictorian at Harvard sleeps 8 hours every night, never pulls all-nighters, and still has time for hobbies? Meanwhile, you're chugging energy drinks at 2 a.m., highlighting entire textbooks and feeling like you're drowning. The truth is, you've been doing studying completely backwards. And in the next 9 minutes, I'm going to prove it to you through the story of one student who went from academic burnout to effortless success by doing the exact opposite of what everyone else does. Here's what's happening. You study for hours, but nothing sticks. You reread the same chapter 5 times and still blank out during exams. You sacrifice sleep, social life, and your mental health, but your grades don't improve. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Academic burnout is everywhere, and it's getting worse every year. But here's the weird part. The top students, the ones getting into medical school and landing dream jobs, they're not burning out at all. So what do they know that you don't? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about being naturally smarter, having better genetics, or even working harder. It's about understanding something fundamental that no one teaches you in school. The difference between motion and progress. Let me tell you about Alex. 2 years ago, Alex was a pre-med student at a competitive university, and he was absolutely miserable. He was studying 12 hours a day, living off coffee and anxiety, and his GPA was barely above average. Alex would wake up at 6 a.m., hit the library by 7, and wouldn't leave until midnight. He had color-coded schedules, dozens of highlighters, and notebooks filled with meticulously copied notes. From the outside, he looked like the perfect student, but Alex was failing. Not his classes, he was passing those, but he was failing at actually learning. He'd study organic chemistry for 6 hours straight, and then couldn't explain basic concepts to his study group. He was putting in maximum effort and getting minimum results. The breaking point came during midterms. Alex had been preparing for weeks, barely sleeping, skipping meals. He walked into his biochemistry exam feeling confident. 2 hours later, he walked out knowing he'd bombed it. That night, Alex called his older brother Mike, who had graduated medical school the year before. Alex broke down on the phone. "I'm working harder than everyone else, but I'm still failing. I think I'm just not smart enough." Mike's response changed everything. "Alex, you're not working harder, you're working longer. There's a huge difference." Mike explained something that nobody had ever told Alex. He said, "When I was struggling in med school, I met this guy, David, who was at the top of our class. I was convinced he was some kind of genius, so I asked him his secret. David told me something I'll never forget. I don't try to learn everything. I try to learn the right things really well." Then he showed me his study schedule. While I was studying 10 hours a day, David was studying 4 hours and getting perfect scores. Mike continued. The difference wasn't time, it was strategy. David had figured out what every top student knows. Studying isn't about time spent, it's about patterns recognized. This is where it gets interesting. Mike explained that David had discovered the 3 principles that separate top students from everyone else. And here's the crazy part. These principles go against everything you've been taught about studying. The first principle is called the 80-20 learning rule, and it's going to flip your entire approach upside down. Most students try to learn everything equally. They read every page, highlight every important sentence, and take notes on every detail. This is like trying to drink from a fire hose. You'll drown in information. Top students do the opposite. They identify the small portion of material that shows up most on exams, and they master that first. Here's how it works. Before Alex even opened a textbook, he would analyze past exams, talk to previous students, and identify the core concepts that showed up repeatedly. Instead of studying all chapters equally, he'd spend most of his time mastering the few chapters that were most important. Think about it. Your professor doesn't create exam questions randomly. They test the concepts they think are most important. Top students reverse engineer this process. Alex started doing this with his organic chemistry class. Instead of memorizing every reaction mechanism, he identified the core reaction types that appeared in most of the problems. He mastered those thoroughly instead of half learning everything. The result? His next exam score jumped dramatically. Same amount of study time, completely different approach. The second principle is called the spacing effect, and it's based on how your brain actually stores information. Most students use what I call binge studying. They cram all their studying for a subject into one massive session right before the exam. This feels productive because you're spending a lot of time, but it's scientifically proven to be the worst way to learn. Your brain doesn't work like a hard drive where you can just dump information and expect it to stay there. It works more like a muscle. It needs repeated exercise over time to get stronger. Top students study in short, spaced-out sessions instead of long cramming marathons. Here's why this works. Every time you retrieve information from memory, you strengthen the neural pathway. But here's the key. This only works if you space it out. Cramming creates the illusion of learning because the information is fresh in your short-term memory, but it disappears within days. Alex discovered that reviewing material a day after first learning it, then again after a few days, then after a week, locked it into his long-term memory permanently. He was spending less time studying, but remembering everything for months instead of days. The science backs this up. Students who use spaced repetition retain most information long-term, while crammers forget almost everything quickly. The third principle is the most powerful one, the teaching test. And this is where top students really separate themselves from everyone else. Most students study passively. They read, reread, highlight, and take notes. But passive studying is like watching someone else exercise and expecting to get fit. You feel like you're doing something, but nothing is actually changing in your brain. Top students study actively. Specifically, they use what's called the teaching test. The rule is simple. If you can't explain it to someone else in simple terms, you don't actually understand it. Alex started doing this with every concept he learned. After studying cellular respiration, he would close his textbook and explain the entire process out loud as if he was teaching it to a friend who had never heard of it before. At first, this was frustrating. Alex realized that even though he'd read the chapter 3 times, he couldn't actually explain how cellular respiration worked without looking at his notes. But this frustration was actually the breakthrough moment. The teaching test forces your brain to organize information and find connections. When you try to explain something, you quickly discover what you actually understand versus what you just think you understand. Alex started doing this for a few minutes after every study session. He'd pretend he was teaching the concept to his little sister, using simple language and examples. If he got stuck, he knew he needed to go back and actually learn that part instead of just memorizing it. This one change dramatically improved his retention and made exams feel easy because he truly understood the material instead of just recognizing it. So what happened to Alex after he started using these 3 principles within 1 semester? His GPA improved significantly, but more importantly, studying stopped feeling like torture. Alex went from studying all day to having a normal, balanced schedule. He started sleeping properly every night. He joined an intramural soccer team. He even started dating someone. But here's the most amazing part. He scored incredibly well on the MCAT. The same guy who was struggling to pass organic chemistry performed better than most people taking the medical school entrance exam. Alex told me, "It wasn't that I got smarter, it's that I stopped wasting my intelligence on inefficient methods." Today, Alex is in his 2nd year of medical school, and he's still using these same principles. While his classmates are burning out, Alex is thriving. He studies less, sleeps more, and consistently performs at the top of his class. The difference? He learned to work with his brain instead of against it. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true, but there's solid science behind each of these principles. The focus on important material is based on how our brains naturally identify patterns and prioritize information that matters most. The spacing effect has been studied for over a century. Scientists discovered that we forget information in a predictable way, but spaced repetition can dramatically slow down that forgetting process. The teaching test is based on what educators call active learning. When you explain something, you activate multiple areas of your brain simultaneously: language processing, memory retrieval, and logical organization. This creates stronger neural pathways than passive reading. Your brain is incredibly powerful, but most people are using outdated methods. These principles are like upgrading to a better system. So here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one subject you're currently struggling with. It could be calculus, biology, history, whatever. For the next week, I want you to try just one of these principles. If you choose the focus approach, identify the most important material for your next exam. If you choose spacing, break up your study sessions into shorter, repeated intervals. If you choose the teaching test, spend a few minutes after each study session explaining the concepts out loud. Just pick one and try it for 1 week. I guarantee you'll see a difference. And if this video helped you see studying in a completely different way, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your future self will thank you for the decision you make right now. Are you going to keep doing what everyone else is doing and getting average results? Or are you going to start studying like the top students and finally reach your potential? The choice is yours. Which principle are you going to try first? Let me know in the comments below.